Someone asked me recently, like, oh, what does it take to launch a VC fund? And it's like, oh, you just have to be completely naive.
The journey starts, what do founders need to succeed? I have been in those shoes. I've been a founder.
I spent the last 25 years in finance. I had the opportunity to look at so many different types of business models.
I fundraise for companies where you have a shiny product and you have customers and you can build a story around that. Fundraising for a fund is basically a slide deck and us, right? I don't think we had planned it would be so hard. What's missing in the ecosystem is not talent. What's missing is conviction. It's leadership.
The money itself is a commodity.
Yeah.
So it's the conviction, the expertise, knowing when to help, knowing when to get out of the way.
What is Amiral in French means flagship. We really believe that the next Canadian flagship companies will be technology companies.
Guys, it's been a pleasure. Looking forward to the next 10 plus years. So welcome to the Flagship Podcast. We did this episode 2 years ago, and so thanks for being on again, guys. The episode 2 years ago we did was like, hey, what is Amiral Ventures? Why we're doing this thing? And for those that are curious, you can go and check it out. And then someone asked me recently, oh, what does it take to launch a VC fund? And it's, oh, you just have to be completely naive. So I think back to 2 years ago, yes, we're good to go. We're going to launch soon. It's taken a long time. So I figured it'd be good to do this episode again and talk about what we've learned and also, go back to some of those concepts of like why we're doing this and a little bit of our background. So first question to you guys. First off, it's been fun being in the trenches with you and fun doing this podcast to dive in. Why are we doing this? How do we meet? Curious to get the genesis story.
Yeah, no, cool. And like, very good idea to do this again post-launch. And like we have more scars. We already had scars before, I think, starting on the journey, and we have a lot more right now. But I don't think founders really want to hear about how hard it is to raise a fund when they are in the trenches and like building the future. And I think this is how Amiral started, is basically we are super excited about the talent and the potential of the ecosystem. And we thought that there are gaps and let's try to have an impact. So I think the journey starts really there. It starts, what do founders need to succeed? And I guess like from my part, if I get started first, is I have been in those shoes. I've been a founder, bootstrapped companies, fundraised, exited, failed, succeeded. And along the way, I had the great chance of meeting Dom in one of the fundraise in the Series A of Nobo, and then Nectar in creating value with our customers. And it all starts there, right? Trying to build a very complementary team that can have this kind of impact with our portfolio companies.
It's funny because we both met when Fred was raising capital in this it's a very good example because you were doing exactly what we want to support today as investors. But we connected really well at the time. It was in 2014, 2015?
2014, yeah.
And then reconnected in 2022 to start discussing about the opportunity. So I think it's all about the opportunity that is today in the market, that was in the market at the time. And to me, that was in the market 20 years ago. The opportunity of supporting talented entrepreneurs and supporting them with expertise, with capital, of course. And you were the entrepreneur, the talented guy at the time in 2014. And it's funny, today we're launching a fund with you at Nectar.
And Dom, you're a founder in your own right. Like you started Expand Capital, like you started Amiral Ventures. So walk us through the journey maybe of starting a fund. Like walk us through Expand, the early days, and what that fund was.
And I guess I have to admit I'm the finance guy. I spent
need one.
Hopefully. I spent the last 25 years in finance, but the first 12 years working in investment banking, doing M&A advisory between Montreal. I spent a few years in New York, a few years in Paris. But it was between 2000 and 2012. It was a fantastic period to be working in M&A. I was mostly doing advisory business in the technology sector. So I had the opportunity to look at so many different types of business models. If you remember those years where YouTube, Facebook were created, it was fascinating to be working in the finance space with that type of major buzz that was in the market at the time. And I came back in 2012, came back to Montreal to launch a new fund called Expand Capital with my former partner, Alex, a great guy. And we did, I have to say, I think we did a few good things. We failed on many businesses, but most importantly, we delivered return to IPOs, a few strategic exits. It was a fun time, yeah.
Maybe I'll give my outside perspective. We didn't know each other back then, but I remember like being in the market. And it's like, what is this fund? It came out of nowhere, and then you guys invest in these iconic companies, right? So you guys had pretty good success, I want to say, with some pretty well-known brand names.
Not a lot of funds here in Quebec can say they brought 2 companies to IPO, right? Plus all of the other kind of transactions and other deals in your career. But I think that kind of experience. And then when I was talking about getting the right team around the table, it's that. Being a VC is not like unidimensional, right? And because you deal with like maybe 12, 15, 20 companies in portfolio who have their full businesses, who have like financing problems, HR problems, product problems, sales problems. So you need to have the capability to support and to understand all of these areas.
Yeah, you mentioned the so as we're raising a fund, and we'll get into fundraising and the challenges, but one thing is that like I think I know your bios by heart at this point. It's like we could probably do each other's bios, and it never ceases to amaze me as when we're doing those like bios, and Fred, in your point, and it's like it always shocks me. It's if everyone takes their phone today and looks at it, there's these 3 letters called LTE, and I'm like, oh, Fred created LTE.
Well, my team.
Okay, your team. Thanks for sharing credit. But yeah, maybe give us a bit of a glimpse as to your early background as well, because you founded 2 companies before, and then your background.
Yeah. This journey that we're starting now is career number 3 or 3rd phase of my career, right? So people I think know more of my startups, but I spent 10 years in wireless technology and 7 outside of Canada. And so, I was in Japan when 3G was not even deployed in Europe. And then I moved in Europe to start the UMTS product line with Nortel. And LTE was an interesting project led mainly by Verizon in the US. And our team was called Long-Term Evolution, right? So we were basically figuring out an evolution to the 3G path that Verizon had picked, and it became the standard. And that's why you see LTE on your phone, which means long-term evolution. So it's a stupid name.
So and maybe in my end, how we met, I had a small consulting company called P&R, which is still around, still doing super well. And we were essentially helping a lot big institutional funds post-investment. And we developed this cool expertise of a big company, big fund invests, then we come in and help the portfolio companies out. And I remember it was actually through the podcast. That's how we met, which is funny.
We met the first time you invited me to the podcast, and then I hired you firm. So that was kind of a good sales strategy.
That's it, my biz dev trick. And I think you guys had just raised your Series B, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And it's like after podcast, you're like, what does your company do? And I kind of give you the quick pitch, and it's like, oh, that's interesting. And we ended up working together, which was really fun, and got to see the journey. And Dom, we almost worked together because one of our closest partners was like, and like with the ups and downs of Theo, we almost did a small mandate together. So it was funny that our paths didn't cross at that point, but it came very close.
Yeah, exactly.
But what was crazy is, well, at least in our interaction back in 2018 was like what now people call value creation. But for us, it was, okay, we're delivering a SaaS platform to this big Japanese customer, but they want more than just the subscription to a platform. They want some work and insights around the platform. How does the use of AI in their company transform their org, their processes? Where will they monetize it? And this is the stuff that as a kind of SaaS provider, you don't really want to spend time on that, and you don't necessarily have the smarts to help them. And this was super interesting that you guys come in and help us win that customer and build value around it. Like, this experience with you was what triggered us to get back in touch when we were starting Amiral, saying, okay, what P&R is doing with La Caisse or other kind of institutional funds and what they're doing with startups post-investment, would like to be able to provide that to our portfolio companies. And we got back in touch to to hire P&R initially.
That's it. Yeah. So I'll share maybe some of the backstory and maybe I'll skip the psychological trauma part of it. And yeah, so let's start P&R. We're doing well. And in early 2020, we had an opportunity to transform our firm into a fund. One of these bigger institutionals had approached us. And then obviously with the pandemic, that didn't happen. It was like literally like a month after that initial conversation, but it stayed in the back of my mind. And then 2+ years later, I was like, maybe I'm going to do this fun thing naively. And I'd already started working on my departure and transitioning out. And that's where I met with you guys. You're like, hey, we're launching this thing called Amiral and we're going to want to use P&R for the fund. I'm like, that's great, guys. Just FYI, I'm like slowly on the way out. So what do you want to do, Nectar? So I want to launch a fund. That's what we're doing.
Why don't you join?
Yeah, that's it. But yeah, the rest is history, as they say. And yeah, it's been a long journey. Thinking back, maybe a good segue to what we've learned over these like close to 3 years now. Like I think you guys started talking about it in September, October 22, joined early 23. And yeah, it's been a long journey. Maybe to talk about from the founder perspective, any founders listening, what's been our experience like raising, but also because we've been spoken to hundreds of founders, like if not more throughout this journey, like any perspectives to share,
Yeah, I think that my biggest learning was really the importance of building trust and building the right relationships, because that's our business, right? When you're a VC fund, you're building trust with a series of investors. You're raising capital, creating the right conditions to be raising capital. You need to build the story and build convictions, and you're doing the same thing with entrepreneurs, building trust with them. Having access to the best entrepreneurs, it's where you're not just putting capital, you need to be putting expertise, but we are fundamentally building partnerships. I think to me, that's really the big point. We knew that, but the importance of that was really surprising to me.
Yeah, totally. It's a people business.
Yeah.
We've learned things on the fundraising of a fund as well, in the sense that I fundraise for companies where you have a shiny product and you have customers and you can build a story around that. Fundraising for a fund is basically a slide deck and us, right? So I don't think we had planned it would be so hard, but now that we're there along the way, we never stopped our work with the founders, right? So I think every week we have been helping founders. We knew that what's missing in the ecosystem is not talent, it's not ambition, it's not smarts. What's missing, and it's not capital, because there is a lot of capital in Canada for startups. What's missing is conviction, right? It's leadership. It's people being able to say, you know what, I will put money into this, even if there are always gaps into a due diligence process. Always. There's always unknowns. We know things will pivot, things will change. So it's building conviction on these founders. And when you can show that you're willing to do this and you're capable of doing this, founders want to work with you. And that's what we've witnessed in the last 2 years.
I think the other point I would add is really the quality of the businesses that we have here.
Yeah.
It is amazing. Unfortunately, we had to say no to many opportunities, which were really interesting. But wow, I gotta say, we have beautiful companies. We have talented people, talented entrepreneurs. So I don't want to say it was a surprise, but that was really reassuring to see the quality of the pipeline that we're facing.
Yeah. And along the way, as you guys know, we did 2 investments before having a fund, which is talking about conviction and commitment. Yeah, some deals are just too good to say no to, and we figure out a way to do them without having a closed fund. So really exciting. I think the other thing we've learned is that the gap we believed existed in terms of leadership of rounds and capital gap and all of that is there, but has moved in these 2. It has actually moved from when late 22, we were talking about a Series A gap. There was a lot of capital. We had been seeing super inflated valuation coming out of the 2021, 22 period. I think the last 2 years, we've seen that gap move kind of south to seed and seed extensions and pre-A's. We've all seen the stats on the graduation rate from C to A, like going down. The time it takes is now 36 months instead of 18. But what this means is in that period, entrepreneurs are learning new reflexes. They're more cash efficient. Basically, we see a lot of good things happening, but the leadership gap is there. And that's how we kind of refocused Amiral to say, okay, this is the inflection point where we're going to add the most value.
Yeah, the inflection point is crucial. We can see the inflection point at the Series A, but that's what we do, Series A or late seed. The inflection point can be there, and that's what we're financing. We're excited about something happening with the company. Clearly, the growth is there. The metrics are really different, and there are human transformations as well. That's really interesting because basically, a startup is very often the story of a guy or girl building a product. That person is an expert in building a new technology, and that person needs to transform into a CEO of a company, a manager. And that's a major transformation. You've faced it, Fred, in the past, and that's really super interesting. And there's no finance there. It's not a question of finance, of business or technology. It's a human question. And that's really interesting to be working with in these conditions.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Like, I think at the point you brought up before, Dom, too, about the quality people. I think my learning of doing this new job is, there's not lack of founders. If anything, the main challenge I see in the industry is that all the good founders are getting sucked down to the US. And we could talk about that if we want to, but it's like, I think a lot of reasons. And I think what we're trying to do at Amiral is put a little bit of stake in the ground and say, hey, we're proudly Canadian, based in Quebec, but we think we can do a good job. And the only way we can do that really is providing something of substance, right? Like the money itself is a commodity, like you said.
Yeah.
So it's the conviction, the expertise, knowing when to help, knowing when to get out of the way. And I think we've done a good job so far with the two companies we've invested in so far. But yeah, that's been the biggest lesson is there's a business opportunity, but at the same time, it's not, the greatest moment in Canadian tech. It feels like we're back on the upswing, but there's still a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I think another thing we learned, things that we had not planned or not expected in the last 2 years is how much, I guess, the more advanced the founder community, the folks who have had success, had exited in our tech ecosystem, how much they want to contribute. And I'm still pinching myself. Like, I'm amazed at the list of LPs or investors we got into Amiral, and pretty much everyone who's had an exit or success in town has put some money in the fund. And not only they put some money, but they say, hey, and I want to help your portfolio companies. That's amazing.
Yeah. So if there are any founders listening that have had exits, it's not too late.
Yeah.
We have a second close. But yeah, I think that's it. You're talking about pitching yourself, right? It's like the list of founders that are back is really cool. And I think that goes back to maybe our motto of trying to help founders and our approach. Yeah. Maybe for people that aren't as familiar with what we're trying to do, can we give the quick sales pitch? What is Amiral and why should you take our money?
Yeah, obviously. And maybe we can start with the thesis, right? Is we believe that the Canadian economy can be more prosperous. So we have a whole thesis around what we now call Prosperity Decoded. And it's around how technology helps enterprises be more productive, resilient, and sustainable. So those are the 3 pillars. And basically, if you deal with Amiral, what you're going to get is you're going to get a rapid yes or no. And we are not followers. So basically, if your round is led by someone and you're missing the last 500K, I mean, good for you. This is not the role we want to play. We really are here to lead or co-lead, take half of the kind of seed plus, pre-A rounds with checks between 1 and 2 million. And obviously, we're going to do 15 companies. So basically, rolling up our sleeves and be very available and present to support.
Again, we're building partnerships. So we're not just putting capital or we're not just investing with specific conditions. We're building a partnership, partnering with entrepreneurs and supporting them building their companies. So we provide expertise. We have networks. We have 40 plus investors coming from the technology world. So we might be only 3 today, but we have so many people working with us that we can put to contribution with our portfolio companies.
Yeah, no, obviously, I like our thesis. And maybe to double click on it, I'll give my perspective on, you mentioned Prosperity Decoded, the way we think about creating economic prosperity and the 3 pillars that we've based it on, like productivity, sustainability, resilience. I find it matches the famous, cringy expression of where the puck is going. It's overused a bit, but it's still true. It rings true today of productivity. It's like Canada faces a challenge, but every country is going to have the same thing, every enterprise elsewhere. Sustainability is like, how do you create businesses that have this notion of double bottom line? And then resilience, which again, today is very apropos. We're moving into the multipolar world. How companies and nations think about their own sovereignty is evolving. Yeah, I like how we've developed this thesis and worldview. So I'll let you guys respond, but maybe a segue after will be is, okay, how do we plan to help? We mentioned, yes, we'll be involved and we have the expertise, but maybe the second level of that, what does that look like?
Yeah. Obviously, there's the three of us and our mentors and founding investors who obviously are available to help. But I think when it comes down to helping the companies in day-to-day, we have expertise in building AI companies and data-driven companies. We have expertise in hiring execs and hiring leadership. We have expertise in financing these companies. Dom has seen any type of transactions that can exist. So obviously, we're not there to be in the way, but we're definitely available when things go well and when the shit hits the fan as well. And it's going to happen. That's the thing, right?
Yeah, I think we can say that the three of us put together, I think we can say we have faced any type of business problem that you can face as an entrepreneur. So the combination of our three experiences, I think is super valuable.
Yeah, totally. And my read of the market is that there's not that many funds. Well, one, there's not enough capital, period. I think that's one thing. And then there's just not enough funds that are led by founders that have done this. So I think that so far we seem to be resonating in the market. And like you said, co-lead, we want to work with the people here, right? And then maybe my perspective on this whole notion of like how we help, right? So we mentioned already our participation, our involvement, our mentors, this double opt-in, right? Trying to create a transactional interface, but also just people will hire eventually, right? So people that'll be at our on the payroll that will be at our disposal of our startups. And we mentioned those first two investments. So like maybe a little bit of a spotlight on Maquette and Maxa. I think we're all a little biased on these two.
We're going to have to find companies that don't start with MA.
That's it, yeah. The joke that there is, we named our fund A, so then we show up on top of the yellow pages. Yeah, so what do those companies do? Maybe I'll throw it to you, Fred. Give us the quick pitch for those two and why we like those founders.
Yeah, they're good examples of our productivity thesis and in some way our sustainability thesis as well. But if you think about these two companies, they both leverage AI and some AI architecture to solve very specific vertical problems in the industry. Maxa addresses the finance function inside of a large company. So what's often called FP&A, financial planning analysis. So if you think any large enterprise has data in 4, 10, 12, 20 ERPs and system of records, and LLMs work really badly on this type of data. So they built an architecture so that even the CFO and the FP&A can have an agent that helps reasoning instead of just moving around CSVs from one file to the other, from one database to the other. So that's AI for CFOs is the first investment we've made. And then Maquette is bringing everything that Gen AI and Agentic has to offer to the architecture process. Again, what we like about it is it's not something that if you just web scrape all the data and you train the next version of ChatGPT, you can do, right? You have to produce AutoCAD plans. And so there's a need for very proprietary data. There's a need for very proprietary models as well. So Maquette is bringing that level of AI and simplicity to the residential home building and designing process.
And maybe, Dom, on your end, those two companies, but also, we're talking about the whole AI buzzword. How do you see that our future companies using AI? We're talking about data, et cetera. So curious, since it is le mot à la mode today.
It might be le mot à la mode, but those two companies are actually fantastic examples of what we want to be doing. Innovation companies led by talented people. But what's interesting is that the innovation with Maquette and Maxa is not necessarily the AI itself. It's the platform that they have built to be using AI. And that's what we want to see in our companies. We will not be investing in LLMs or foundational models. We will be investing in innovative companies that are using AI but where the innovation is in the collection of exclusive data, for instance. And really, this is what we want to see, because AI it's a big buzzword. It's a really powerful tool, but today it is super democratic. We all have access to good AIs, and all the companies in the world have access to good AI. So it cannot be the innovation itself. That's what.
It's safe to say I'm super excited about like us getting going and launching. And while I got you guys here, maybe we'll ask questions that I don't typically ask. What's been the most surprising since we decided to do this thing? And what surprised you the most, like positive or negative?
I think that the numbers in Canada are tough, difficult to watch. We're seeing too many startup companies going south of the border to get their financing, and it's of course it's disappointing, and it's one of the reasons why we built Amiral, to provide a very strong financing alternative to those startups. But looking at the numbers, it's tough, because as a country, when you don't take the lead, or when you don't take ownership of your best startup companies, there will be a very big impact on the long run. So we cannot be building our economy without financing our best startups at the critical moment in their life. I think to me, it's a bit sad, but we really want to contribute. We really want to provide a solution with Amiral.
I don't know if I would qualify that as a surprise, but in the post-pandemic years, a lot of grassroots initiatives have slowed down, if not disappeared, in Canada. And so, maybe it's not surprising, but to me, it's like successful ecosystems in innovation and tech must have grassroots movements, right? So obviously, we still have with TechAid that has opened, and Startup Fest still doing its thing. And by the way, thank you. We're in their office right now, so that's great. But as a whole, like the disappearance of Notman House, and there were a lot of things that I felt the grassroots movements were disappearing, and you will not resuscitate an ecosystem top down by a big policy or something like that. It really needs to be the builders who are building and talking less and building more will be the ones who will revive this ecosystem. And now excited because we see it, and we're trying to play our like very small part into this. The stuff you're doing with North Star as an example, Nectar, is absolutely insane. But I think if we want this country to get back on track on tech and innovation, it needs to look down at the grassroots movements and not try to build one other big government policy.
Yeah, totally. Go ahead.
And one way to do it is actually to have builders on our own cap table, part of Amiral financing.
Yeah.
Amiral guys like you, of course, but we have some of the best entrepreneurs in Quebec now part of Amiral as investors and as mentors. So I think it's really one part of the solution.
Yeah, maybe mine, since I'll answer my own question, what surprises the most, maybe I'll double click on your part about community. And so it's been a very active part of our strategy, right? I really like this notion of rising tides lifts all boats. We named our content section after it. But I feel like we've all had these conversations. It's part of our job. Yes, we need to invest, and that's the main job, but we're a less mature ecosystem here, right? We're not in the valleys. We're trying to give back. So we're trying to work with all the investors, all the founders. So like and yes, selfishly, we're benefiting from it, right? Yes, pipeline, but people that get inspired, that
in the long run, it always pays.
That's
right?
it. Yeah, this notion of paid forward. So it's been surprising, the positive reaction. And I often joke I'm looking forward to transitioning from event coordinator to investor, but now it seems to have happened. The other thing is that maybe on the firm building side, I think the things that's been fun, not surprising, but it's, like the quality of our partnership. I find we've been super tight, and despite a lot of punches and sometimes very tough conversations. Fuck, did we keep doing this? It was never a straight line to closing this fund.
Yeah, again, not a surprise for me, because we sat down in early 23 and made sure that we shared the same values and same objectives. So not a surprise, but I'm totally resonate with you. If we had closed this fund in 8 months, it would be very different than now. 3 years later, like if we haven't abandoned and killed each other after 3 years in this fundraise process, I think we're there for the long run.
The other expression is you only know the quality of the sailor during rough seas.
Yeah.
So I
You have
find
to stop with the boat analogies here.
I'll repeat the story since you brought it up. I'll repeat the story. You guys have heard it. But yeah, I find each of us had this motto of there's no plan B. Like we weren't doing any side gigs. And my previous company, when I left, I was working at Google for a few years and they offered me to stick around. He offered me like a 6 month sabbatical and before I went to start P&R, and obviously I refused that because I kind of have that in the head of my former co-founders, but also 6 months wasn't enough. So I sent them the story of burning the boats, the story of the conquistador that came into modern day like Mexico and told the soldiers burn the ships. And the end of the story is like they ended up winning. So now it's okay, the name of my fund is like a boat. So I feel like there's always this boat analogy. But I find it does ring true of, yeah, we did this all in and we've made it. Other learnings too, you mentioned them. It's, man, there's so many good people. It's been tough to say no. And it's part of the job. We have to say no a lot. And in trying to do it in a very open, providing a lot of transparent feedback and not like brushing off people, right? So I think that's part of our strategy is like, okay, how do we, even for all the people who say no, how do we create value for them in any way we can?
I think that we realized that transparency was of course extremely important with entrepreneurs and the people we're dealing with, but it is even today part of our values, transparency, because providing the real constructive feedback, even if it's a no to entrepreneurs, it is highly valuable to them. And in those few cases where we said no with a very complete explanation of why we said no, my God, that it was a wow moment for those entrepreneurs because we were probably the first ones to give that type of feedback. And that's I think that's really important.
Yeah, totally. And their value of good is not good enough, which I like a lot. The respect for the founder journey, radical transparency, and good is not good enough. We're a fledgling startup ourselves, and we have a lot to prove yet. Yes, we're trying to make our mark. We've worked with 2 good companies so far, but we're just at the beginning.
Yeah. And we can complain about fundraising a fund, but there's nothing harder than building a company from the ground up. And so we got to respect that. When I was raising Series B at Nobo, we pitched 100 VCs, right? And if 2-3 of them like actually gave feedback on why they were saying no, it's nice. So we were basically going back at them and asking, no, I want more details on why you say no. And we created a book of no, which was a PowerPoint deck with all the reasons, but until we finally got a term sheet in San Francisco. But that's the kind of thing that I think as part of our values, we want to give always feedback, right?
Yeah, totally. And yeah, like we chat about these ideas, right? How do we create an operational way of having candid feedback and providing more structured responses? Yeah, I know. We could talk about other subjects.
But just before, like you're talking about giving back and lifting all boats with the community. But what I'm also super happy when I see what we've done in the last 2 years is we don't limit that to the tech ecosystem, right? Obviously it's center of our lives and what we think about when we wake up in the morning, but like the work you're doing with TechAid, we just went singing for Marvin on the Rock. I'm involved with the DPG Foundation. This stuff is also about giving back, and it's also part of the Amiral values, and it's not necessarily always in the tech ecosystem, but I think it's important.
Yeah, that thing, it goes back to live once and try and leave this world a little bit better than, when you found it.
But we're better investors than singers.
That's it. We might have closed one LP, we'll see. Like I was saying, I'm teasing. Yeah, but that was really cool for people that don't know. Like the 2 of us went on stage and sang in front of 600-700 people, and not very well, but it was fun.
Oh yeah, that's the idea of the event. Challenging, we challenged about 10 business leaders to sing on a stage in a real theater with a real band, and it was a fantastic experience.
Yeah. A little stressed out, but I think we did well. So guys, last question. Where are we going? What are we excited about next 5-10 years? Like I looked at our term sheet. Oh shit, like it's a 10-year, it's a 10. So yeah, what are we excited about?
I think back to the name Amiral. I don't think that we've explained what is Amiral. Amiral is in French, vaisseau amiral. It means flagship. And we really believe that the next Canadian flagship companies will be technology companies. And if we're to succeed in doing that, that's where I'm really excited to be building some of the future great companies of the country. That to me, it's really exciting.
Yeah. 10 years, it's actually more than that. But yeah, in the next 4 years, we're on a mission to find those 15, 16 future flagships. And that it's, to me, it's part of a journey of the ecosystem as well, right? So you can't compare yourself to Silicon Valley, who are at generation 10 generations of exits. So we're at 2-3 generations of exit here. So we need to be part of that movement and start that flywheel. So yeah, I think this is super exciting, but there's going to be a fund 2 and a fund 3, and
let's not talk about fundraising. Guys, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for being on the podcast. It's like looking forward to the next 10 plus 20, 30 years, depending on how many funds we raise, but it's been fun.
yeah, absolutely. We'll do another one at fund 2.